Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Adam from Media Lounge, and I'm joined today by Damian Rees from Make Human. Hi, Damian.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Guest on the show last time, or webinar last time. Yeah, here again today to help us with a topic we've been talking about since July at Media Lounge, which is information architecture and taxonomy. So look, guys, you've given up your time to come on the webinar today. First and foremost, we want it to be informative, help you save some time. We want you to justify sort of reinvesting in your e-commerce stores. So hopefully the recommendations that we make today are things you can implement. There should be some key takeaways that you get that you can start using today. And that should give you kind of boosting conversion, boosting revenue that you can then reinvest back in the store. Damian's got some really great insights into good and bad examples of information architecture, so we look forward to those. And our partner and sponsor for today, Hotjar, have given us 5 Hotjar business accounts to access all their top features. So we'll be giving away those towards the end of the webinar. Yeah, chuck in emojis. If you've got any comments, then obviously pop them in the chat. Chris will read those out. Any questions or anything like that, we'll have a Q&A towards the end. So yeah, please make it as interactive as you can. Who's this for? Well, e-commerce managers, marketing teams, content writers, agencies, IT teams, business owners, and anyone working or running an e-commerce business. So let's have a look in what we're talking about today. We've got navigation systems, so the primary methods and features customers use to browse and navigate your store. We've got search systems, so how prominent are they? How do they function? What sort of results do they deliver? When you have look at a lot of people's GA, you'll see that search tends to have a low engagement rate, but a high conversion rate compared to the rest of the site. So sometimes it's just about how you position the prominence and things like that to make that more interactive to get those results to turn around. We've got categorization and labeling. So how do we organize the products into a logical categories, subcategories? And how do we label those categories that's going to connect with our audience and the products that we're selling? We've got the product information. So offering clear, detailed and accurate product information and making sure that's in a really central place for people to be able to find it. And user flows, are they intuitive? Are they straightforward? Are we minimizing the number of clicks or steps the user must take to complete their task? And also making sure that we're not making any shortcuts. We don't want people to still have questions they've got unanswered, or if you've got a complicated buying process, or you've got considered purchases where people need to think in depth. You might be selling sofas or something like that, where people need to take measurements or understand the delivery. Have we done the education piece well enough for people to be able to move through that flow? So what problems does this address? It's going to improve the user flows and the site logic, so a more logical flow and adjustments to the content hierarchy. We're going to reduce things like click rage. You can actually track click rage in Hotjar, which is really, really good. And you can see where some of the frustration comes from. I know Damian's got some points of overwhelm as well to go through in his examples. Have we maintained mental models? So help the user navigate via familiarity and things that they expect to see or have seen before or perceive to be something that they would normally use. So mental models are really powerful. We want to improve the user experience and conversion rate, because that's ultimately going to help you with those revenues and justifying the investment in these areas. And it gives you the investment to reinvest back into further growth for the business. So navigation systems, Damian's going to talk through the next section, and we're going to have a chat over some of the examples that he's got. As I say, if there's any questions, chuck them in the chat, and then Chris will try and read them out at an appropriate time, or we'll cover them in the Q&A towards the end. So Damian, over to you on these.
Okay, thanks. So as I'm sure you're aware, there's loads of different types of navigation. We've listed a few here that are important, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these in some examples that I'm going to take you through. So I guess let's get started with some good and bad examples. So the first one to highlight is mega menus are a really common way to provide a really good overview of the products available. And on the one hand, it's a great tool to offer fast access to everything available. on the other hand, it can act as a bit of an overwhelm. And so what do we mean by overwhelm? And I guess it's an issue when people feel overwhelmed, because what happens is we're all often in cognitive overload. So it doesn't take much to push us over into that really uncomfortable state of, oh, this is just too much effort. You've got emails going off, you've got alerts on your phone, you've got stuff and pressure to do because we've all got busy lives. And so when you hit something that just feels a bit like, oh, this is going to be really hard to find what I'm looking for, like I'm scanning through it and I'm not seeing immediately what I want, that's where overwhelm can have a big issue. And on the one hand, kind of mega menus do a good job because they provide access to things really quickly. But on the other hand, it can be that just enough to make you feel like, oh, this is too much effort, I'm going.
And there's a lot of choice here, isn't there? There is an overwhelming amount of choice, and a lot of it seems like it could be brought into a fewer parent categories. There's a lot that start with the word garden, for example, that could be in a slightly better parent category.
And on the one hand, it's really good because they've got really big standout category names, right? But on the other hand, it's not so good because if I wanted to get an overview of, for example, garden power tools, that isn't a clickable link. So it doesn't provide me the ability to go and see the overview. I've then got to choose from one of the other categories that I may not know much about. So I think it's one of those where, and this is obviously just one of many. So as you hover down that left-hand column, this display will change with all the different options, and that can just start to feel like, oh my God, this is a bit too much for me. So I think it's one of
there's a real world example here as well I've spoken about with the team before, is they did some in supermarkets. You've all been there when they're trying to give you like a little sample at the end of an aisle, and they did one with jams, and they had 27 jams on one store or one aisle, and they had like 10 on the other, and the one that had 10 sold 3 times as much because people were more comfortable buying from a smaller selection than they were being overwhelmed with too many. So we get it in the physical world, and then we're also seeing it here in e-commerce.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all want choice, right? But there's a point at which choice becomes too much and we can't handle it.
So what you're saying in this example, garden power tools isn't clickable?
No. So those top level categories that could be really useful at providing an overview and an understanding of what is this and how do they work, and maybe a bit of education to help me, guide me to a decision, those top levels aren't clickable. So, there's 2 things going on here. There's that overwhelm factor and the fact that you can't click the top level categories. That doesn't really help when you're not sure what you're looking for.
Okay, great.
Okay. One? So on to the next one. So another sort of issue that I see quite a lot is stuffing too many items into one category label. So under groceries, we've got pretty much everything that Sainsbury's does. And then those other sort of top level categories, they just don't seem very balanced. So for example, things like recipes and summer and occasions, they're not as important as all of the stuff in groceries to most people. And also the fact that you've got summer is the first category under groceries. So you've
needed it twice.
Everything and then doubled up on it. And that is something that is also not very helpful, because what you're then forcing people to do is look down a whole long list of items that if they were maybe spread across that top level product categories, that might have provided an easier access to the information below.
What we've seen on a recent sports site is once you've made a selection of your team, for example, the team that you follow in football, the navigation then changes to just be items for that team. So effectively on here, you could start with groceries, and then the navigation, horizontally could then also change just to grocery items.
Yep. I mean, that can work as long as you know a way back. So where it replaces your previous navigation, it's not such a great idea, because that can then feel like you're stuck within a system and you can't get to the back up to the top.
Okay.
So as long as there's a way that you can clearly see that's available, then that can work. I'm actually going to show an example later on that shows a better way, I think, of doing this with top level categories.
Great.
So I think that's a good example of maybe what not to do. And then on the next slide, we've got a similar situation. So Boots do something similar, where shop by department, they're throwing kind of everything into that list. But they've also gone a next level to make it even worse, because clicking on one of those sections brings up another menu of loads of stuff that then brings up another menu of loads of stuff. And
it must be quite hard though for someone like Boots and the range that they offer.
yeah,
Like, how do you condense this into something that each level is going to have the right products in and be familiar to the customer, and that they recognize that's where it should be, stored under?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a real problem. I mean, navigation and categorizing all your products is going to be hard. There's no doubt about that, but it is doable. And the example I'm going to give you in a minute is another site that's got a hell of a lot of different products, but they managed to do it. So,
and the ones that we've looked at here so far have all got this left-hand navigation where you kind of go across the page.
Yeah.
Is that are you seeing a rise in people using that type of navigation, or is it just bigger catalog stuff?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I think I would probably still categorize this as a mega menu to some extent, but it's just not the norm necessarily in some of the other mega menus that are more top down and provide different groups of categories. A bit like the Argos one is a mega menu, but it's coming from the left rather than from the top.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I kind of get your point that Boots have got a difficult job to do, but there's no sort of secondary categorization. So when you go into beauty and skincare, it kind of feels like it's all over the place. There's no logic to the order there, and the fact that the items are actually in quite a small font just makes it just a little bit harder. So I don't think they do a great job. But interestingly, if you just click, what they have done on their homepage is they've kind of noticed, I think, they've got a bit of a navigation issue. So they've now provided this new feature on the homepage, which is almost like circumventing the navigation problem by providing a new navigation on the homepage. So I guess
it's like some hot links, isn't it? These are the things that most people are looking for.
Yeah, it kind of works, but I'd argue that why couldn't they do that within the navigation and get the navigation right, and then they don't need this. So yeah, I just think it's a kind of interesting example where they've tried to fix it.
Yeah, maybe it's a temporary measure.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, and then this is the good example that I was going to highlight. And there's a number of reasons why I think this is good. So the first one is they've got different tiers. So you've got women and men. So that's the first sort of tier choice. Then you've got secondary choice of lots of items, which is that top level product category. So Boots could do the same here, for example. Mm-hmm. But I think what they do really well is the use of space underneath that. So that mega menu is providing me with everything I kind of need. So in the left-hand side, I've got an ordered list of stuff that I can find quickly in terms of categories. Then under trending now, I'm starting to see a visual representation of different products. So I can quickly make decisions. Also, the fact that it's good use of white space, it doesn't feel overwhelming, even though there's a lot of information here. And it feels like something that I can spend a bit of time and work out what I need without feeling like I'm not going to get somewhere. So I think half the battle is keeping people engaged with it, right? And I think this does a great job of that, because it immediately feels like it's accessible and I can find what I need.
Well, before you even get to the shop by type, you're already in a third layer, aren't you? You're already in women, you're already in dresses. But actually, that part's very clean, and then it's into how they're allowing people to shop for those different dresses.
Yeah, and
so I think by type, by what's trending, by body fit, and then by kind of almost designer.
Yeah, other things they want to highlight. So that obviously good use of the mega menu is highlighting products and stuff that you want to highlight to customers as well. But I think the other thing that works quite well here is that a principle that comes up in UX quite a lot is recognition over recall. So we're much faster at remembering things when we recognize something that fits what we're looking for, as opposed to trying to remember a category name or a type. So that's what they do really well here with those visual representations.
Great.
And then the other one that I was going to show here was IKEA. Now, maybe they've got an unfair advantage because they can do this and maybe other sites can't. But if you think of how big their product catalog is going to be, it's going to be big, right? So, but what they do is they give another visual representation of room type. And so quite quickly, you can scan down the list, you can either look at the label or you can make a decision visually. And then if you click into that, so if you just click,
am I going next? Sorry.
Yeah. Then what they do is they provide a kind of further breakdown of different stages. So I've selected kitchen in this example. Then they select, then I can select like the different stage of where I'm at with my kitchen. So I'm at my, planning phase, or I'm install phase, or whatever it might be. And then below that, there's another set of navigation categories, again visual, of the other options available to me. So I just think this is a really nice example where that navigation journey feels like it's an easy decision in each phase to get me to where I want to go to.
So how could Boots maybe implement something like this? Would Boots be better off offering you to choose what part of the body the product you're looking for is?
Quite possibly, yeah. So I've done a project before where we worked with a similar sort of competitor, I suppose, of Boots. And what we found was that, yeah, people wanted to organize content. So we did card sorting and tree testing. And what we found was that people wanted to organize things like skincare or bath bombs or whatever into body parts. So it was either head, face, or it was the full body, or it was feet, or whatever. And that just made people find things a lot quicker. And we saw a big increase in findability in those tree tests that we did. So
yeah, it's almost like application, isn't it? And that's what IKEA are doing, is they're saying, is it for your lounge? Is it for your dining room? Is it for your bedroom? And that then helps you mentally think, okay, yes, this is where I'm going to use it.
Yeah, so they could have easily gone the Boots route and just listed loads of different categories of product, right? But they've tried to do the hard work so that users don't have to. And that is really what a lot of these examples are about, is if you do put in the hard work and you make the organization of the content easier, people are going to find products quicker. They're going to buy faster, in theory. And you're doing a lot of that hard work to take the stress away.
Yeah, certainly less frustration in the journey, isn't there? Especially when you start to think about the application of what you're buying.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the next example. So I've gone back to Argos. They haven't done it all badly. And actually, this is quite a good example where they've got two things pretty good here. So at the top there, I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a breadcrumb trail. So you've got home, jewelry and watches, smartwatches. And breadcrumb navigation is often kind of neglected, actually, I find, but actually can be really, really useful. So if somebody's kind of landed in this category page, they can quite quickly go up a level or across, or jump a couple of levels, or just go back home and start again without any stress. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that this is great for is if they do land on this page through search or some kind of paid advertising campaign, or someone sent them a link or whatever it is, they can very easily know where they are within the site structure. And quite a long time ago, there's a guy called Steve Krug who wrote a book called Don't Make Me Think. And it's a really good book at kind of highlighting the basics of UX, I guess. And he used to talk about this idea of a trunk test. So a bit of American terminology there, but the idea that you are thrown in the boot of a car, you're driven somewhere, you get out, and then you've got to work out where you are. So the same principle would apply, that you dump somebody in the middle of a site and they've got to work out what page they're on, what sort of structure they're, what even site they're at. So I think breadcrumbs provide really good cues as to where I am within a structure and give me that control over how to get back.
Is that a common user test you would do on a site then? You would throw someone in at any point in the journey and go, right, now I want you to find yourself this?
It's not something that you do as a matter of course on testing, but it is a good way of testing yourself to see whether somebody could quite easily tell where they are. So you could send anyone a link to in the middle of your website, and then you could just ask them some basics on, do you know where you are? Do you know how to get to the page up or the category up? Do you know how to get back to the home page? All of those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. It's quite a good just test of whether the navigation feels like it's right.
Because that's kind of what you said on Sainsbury's. If we just went into groceries and weren't able to find our way back, that would be the problem. Whereas when we looked at the other example of ASOS, it was very easy to navigate back through that that well laid out navigation structure.
Yeah. Because the more you teach people how the content's structured, the more likely they're going to be familiar and confident if they come back as well. So you're sort of teaching them for next time as well as for this journey and this visit.
Well, I think it's a great test that people on the webinar can go away and do straight away is, you know, pick a random URL, set yourself a challenge. Can you find your way to the category before? Can you find your way home? Can you find your way to similar products? That sort of thing. So yeah, that's a useful thing. Thanks for that.
And the other thing that they do quite well here is with the filters and categories on the left-hand side there. I think it's quite nice that they're immediately obvious that you can click those checkboxes, but also that you've got the numbers to indicate how many products are within those categories and filters. So it's just a good example, I think, of categorized filtering.
It kind of sets the expectation as well, doesn't it? You're not going to click this and just get one.
Yeah.
We've got lots like this.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so then in terms of recommendations, there's obviously loads of things that we could talk about here, but I just wanted to...
This is kind of like a good quick hit list for you guys, I guess. Yeah,
it's kind of like a roundup of some of the best practices that I'd recommend. So we talked about all of these things really. So ensuring the top categories are key product groups, the key one. Making sure breadcrumbs are there to help orientate people. Make sure those top level categories are clickable so they can go to a page of an overview. Don't kind of stuff too much in that mega menu or the navigation options. And one thing we didn't talk about actually, which is important and is a common issue with mega menus in particular, is making sure that hover overlay isn't too quick or too slow. If it's too quick, people find that by the time they've moved their mouse across, it's changed to another option, and it causes quite a lot of frustration in testing. So, but obviously you don't want it too slow either. So playing around with that and getting that about right is definitely worth doing.
Great. Yeah, I think that is one of the ones that we get a lot in terms of an agency is as you roll over the menu, it just disappears. Or as you just try and navigate to level 2, it goes too quickly and you can't do anything. So yeah, that, and also when you come off the menu, sometimes they kind of hang around and, you know, don't go away so you can't see the page behind. So, but both are a problem. And it's that, you know, it's that middle ground that seems to be the bit that we're all trying to aim for.
Yeah. All right, so on to search then. So I think search, so I mentioned before, I do a lot of research into this area. So I sit with people while they navigate and try and buy products. And search is one of those things where typically people rely on navigation first. If navigation is not giving them the confidence they're going to find what they want, then search becomes the second strategy. And, you know, that's good and bad news. So the good news is that, you know, that is a secondary backup. So if they're not getting anywhere with the navigation, you haven't lost them necessarily. But the bad news is they're bringing a lot of expectation from how Google works to your search system, and they're expecting it to work in the way that Google does and to be as easy and offer suggestions and all of that kind of stuff. And I think the big bugbear for people is that actually the results aren't necessarily delivering what they were hoping. So we're going to delve into a couple of examples of those, and these should be relatively quick. But the first one is that searching for stuff can sometimes mean that you have to be very accurate in what you're looking for. So your search term has to match what the system's set up to allow you to do. And in this example, I've probably taken a slightly weird way of spelling leggings, but it's possible, right? And what I see a lot in testing is a lot of the counter argument to this is, oh, well, we've got autocorrect and predictive search, so we wouldn't get people misspelling. But the reality is a lot of people look at their keyboard when they type and they completely miss the suggestions. So this is an accurate situation of what happens. And so in this example, Gymshark basically says, yeah, we don't have any leggings in the way that you've spelt it anyway, which is fair because it is an unusual spelling. But, you know, when people get to dead ends like this, the chances are they're going to leave. So minimizing these dead ends is really important.
How many times have I looked up and seen that I've been writing in capitals for like a sentence?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely one of those people. I never thought of that. That's actually really funny.
Yeah, it happens a lot. So it's quite painful to watch as well when you're testing and you can see somebody typing it really badly. And they're not looking at the autocorrect. They're looking down at the keyboard. So it is very common. So if you click onto the next one, so Lululemon, exactly the same kind of product selection, have anticipated this spelling issue, and they deliver results despite it. So it's a really good example of where they put the effort in. Maybe they've looked at their search logs and they're seeing people are using this, misspelling regularly, and they've tried to accommodate it. I don't know how they've done this, but I think it's an excellent example of, like I said before, doing the hard work so users don't have to.
Yeah, I think a lot of search systems allow you to see previous searches that return 0 results, and then you can kind of match the synonyms and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the next example. So we mentioned kind of that auto complete search. So I think Nike just do a good example of this. I quite like what they do here. So you start typing hoodie, and then they start to predict that, give you top suggestions, as well as serve up product images that fit that. And as you type, that changes. So I just think it's a really nice way that they've implemented that on the site.
Yeah, and do you think the top suggestions are just, potentially based on the most interacted categories and things like that?
Yeah, quite possibly the most popular. I mean, imagine they're the most popular searches, right? But you could serve up, they've got men's hoodie there, so you could serve up, men's hoodies, women's hoodies, children's hoodies as top level categories that they could click on and go to category page. So it's a good example, I think, of how they do that.
Great.
And then this one, so this is just probably the biggest bugbear, I would say, that most people have in research for search, is the lack of relevancy. So in this example, I've searched for lavender bath. So 2 keywords that should be associated together and should deliver something. So in this example, it delivers 1,500 results. None of them are particularly relevant. So, I mean, I suppose you could argue that some of those bath mats might be relevant, but 1,500 products suggest that that's not a great optimized search. And I think the frustration there is that they do actually have a lavender bath soak on the right-hand side, but it doesn't come up in the first 10 pages of search results. Wow. And I couldn't be bothered to go to the 15 or whatever pages to see if it was there. But after the first 10, no one's going to go that far. But I think it's a good example where within that product catalog, that product obviously isn't associated with the word lavender, despite it being a lavender-based product. And it's not actually mentioned in the product description either. So it's a good example of where, as that product was entered into the catalog, it wasn't associated with the right terms at that point in time, which can lead to this problem. So
Damian, they try and do either like an and or an or. Right. So I've seen it before where you get the results on a or query, so lavender or bath, and then what it's doing is it's saying, well, how many times is that word present in the title, description, SEO title, any of the data behind the scenes? Yeah. And then it's serving any one of those as the top result, because the word bath is in it the most amount of time. So normally and results are better. So lavender and bath, i.e. together, rather than or. But that's probably an older search system that they're using there, rather than one of the more sort of intelligent based ones that are around now. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they work behind the scenes, so that's good insight. I just think from a user perspective, no one's going to want to go through 1,500 results. So
it is frustrating, but the 1,500 results, there are probably 1,500 products that have some connection to those two words.
Yeah.
So and again, it's just trying to do, show relevancy, i.e. as in which one's got the highest word count, which is pretty archaic, but
yeah. Okay, so on to some recommendations. So I think the key one for me there is avoid dead ends and no results. So if you're getting those, then what can you offer as an alternative? And that's, again, what Google does really well, is it will take your search term and then say, did you mean this? So providing some way of avoiding those dead ends, because as soon as people hit a dead end, bear in mind what I said before, that search is often the secondary strategy after browser navigation. If they're then hitting a dead end, then the good chance is they're going to go at that point. So want to avoid that as much as possible. I think anticipating support spelling errors or different sort of wacky search terms is definitely worth doing. Providing filters within search results. So we didn't do that, but I've seen quite a lot of search results.
I think the House of Fraser one had it, didn't they, on the left?
Yeah,
there?
yes. So you're right. Yeah, so you're basically in a product category page, just in a filtering navigation system. So that works really well. Providing predictive search, we talked about that, and then making sure the relevancy is right. So those are the key things that I see in research.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good ones out there at the moment. Algolia, Clevu, Searchanize, Clerk. They've all got really good and intelligent search systems that do most of these out of the box and evolve with the search queries that they encounter as they grow. So there's some really good ones out there now.
Okay, good. So categorization and labeling. So this one is really kind of where we're getting to the heart of information architecture. And, I've kind of made that point there that AI is what everyone's talking about, but actually it's IA, I would say, that's the key differentiator in good experiences on e-commerce.
I think I've said that the wrong way around about 10 times since we started.
It is a bit of a mix-up, yeah. So, good information architecture is often invisible. So, we talked about a lot of the issues already, in that it's the categorization behind the scenes that is often making the difference. And how products are categorized, the labels that they're given, structure of the information, all can have a really big effect. So we're going to just demonstrate a couple of examples here. So the first one here, so this is Go Outdoors, I think, the website. And this is where each of those products have been given a category that is mutually exclusive. So they can't have more than one category. So in this example, on the top, on the navigation on the left-hand side there, I don't know, and this might be my ignorance, but I don't know what the difference is between a down jacket and an insulated jacket. I kind of thought they were the same. And maybe that's because I don't know enough about the product category and the product groups, and I'm not an expert in this field. But for me, I didn't see the difference. But they've separated them, so that I then have to, in my mind, work out, well, what is a down jacket? And what is an insulated jacket then? And do I need to go and Google that to work that out? Because they're not helping me decide that here. They're not giving me any indication here. So maybe I need to go away from the site and work that out. So that's the kind of thing that can happen if these categories aren't obvious to people. And maybe Go Outdoors would, if they were on the call, they would argue, well, our audience knows exactly what the difference is, and they're fine, and that's okay if they are confident that's true. But the other problem I've got here is
they don't seem kind of niche enough. They seem more generalist, don't they? That
I would say
anybody that's not that outdoorsy might want to buy an insulated or down jacket, but not knowing the difference, so they've missed an education piece there, haven't they? Yeah,
and the same with windproof and waterproof. So you can either have a windproof category or you can have waterproof. You can't have both.
Can't have both in a jacket.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there are jackets that offer you both, but they've got a categorization system where they forced you into one or the other. And so I think that's where, if you're going to have products that have crossover in their categories, then don't put them in a single category. So allow for filtering to select both. So that's a good example of where the structure behind it can actually provide quite a lot of problems for the user at the other side.
So from a jacket point of view, or just in this particular category, we're saying those category links on the left would actually be better as filters, because then you could select more than one to show windproof and waterproof.
Absolutely. So you could, if you had, for example, all of those jackets were either men or women, which you could argue whether that's a good or a bad thing, given the gender labels at the moment. But you could say they're mutually exclusive. So you could have a category at the top level, which is men and women and kids, maybe, because you're not going to have a jacket that fits all of those categories probably. And if you do, then you create a new category called unisex. So that would be a sort of mutually exclusive category. But all of those others, I would say, are possibly features, and therefore they should be filters that you can select.
I was going to say hood or no hood, but then you could want one with a detachable hood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you need to know the products inside out to get this right. and you need to then also know what your users are thinking and how they think about the product. So it's not a simple task, and I do sympathize with that. It's easy for me to pick out holes and criticize, how they've done it, but that doesn't mean I would have done better necessarily in their situation.
Great.
All right, so on
not
to the
John
next.
Lewis.
Yes, so John Lewis.
Have they?
So, I mean, not necessarily. So I use this example, but so in this example, so I want you to just think in a minute for if you were going to look for a mattress, where would you go?
Home and garden.
Okay. So if you click.
Oh no, this feels like a test now.
So home and garden is where I might have looked. I know you've got bedding. Okay. So you got bedding. So that's like, okay, yep. Good. We're on the right track. But no, it's just sheets and pillows and stuff like that. So if we now go into furniture and lights, which isn't where I don't think I would have gone there necessarily. But if you go to furniture, let's say click once, Adam.
Yeah, we're in there.
You've done it, yeah. So then you've got bedroom furniture and mattresses are there. Now, this is one where you may well have said, oh yeah, I'd go straight to furniture and lights and I'd find it there. But I think the fact that you've got bedding in one section and bedroom furniture in another section would maybe suggest that could be a problem for people. And the fact there's no cross-linking going on. So it's one of those where that structure may well be right and it may be really good. And I think if you tested it, you'd find out, right? But my gut feel is it's not great structure.
Mm-hmm. And why couldn't you have it in both almost?
Well, exactly. You could have cross-referencing, couldn't you? So you could have another link from bedroom furniture to bedding and vice versa under home and garden to bedroom furniture. So there's no reason why you couldn't have cross-linking in that situation. Okay, so the next one. So where would you go for perfume? I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah, this one's a tricky
beauty
one. That's exactly where it is. But my feeling is I wouldn't have gone there. I think I would have gone to women and looked under that section. So it's a good example, though, that we're all quite different, aren't we? We're all different in how we would choose this. So you're right, it is in beauty. I don't think I would have looked there. But these are the kind of ways in which these become a reality, is that when you're searching for stuff, you want to find something quickly, those categorization's got to be pretty good for you to find it.
Yeah. I think the only reason I went there is I can imagine that under men and women being Selfridges would be another gargantuan choice of, tons of categories. Yeah. Whereas I thought beauty might be a bit quicker.
Yep. Well, you weren't wrong.
It's not really beauty, is it? It's fragrance. But anyway, let's jump into that. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So on to the next one then. So this one is just an interesting one where you've navigated to women's bags, and then you see under women's bags you've got all, night, chess, rocking horse, rose. The only one that makes sense to me there is clutch, and maybe that's because I'm uneducated in fashion, which is quite possible. But I would argue that most normal people, and you could argue that most normal people aren't the Burberry audience, I don't know, but most people aren't going to get what the difference is in those types, those categories. And maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe they're going for a more explorative experience where you click through and you explore those categories because it's Burberry and it's more experiential in its nature. Maybe that's what they're going for. But
is that a tactic you've seen, though? Because I know we've spoken before about friction, and we've said, okay, in some points you want to introduce friction to have the payoff of making things feel like, the system is working hard, therefore the friction creates the input. Are there points where you see that you add a layer of confusion to get people to explore more? Yeah.
I mean, but I've probably got to be a bit careful what I say. Burberry used to be a client of mine. So, but what I do know is that they often had that conflict between an editorial-led experience and a kind of easy to use experience, so that they wanted to take people on the Burberry journey and talk about the background behind the product. Why would you shop at Burberry? Okay, is because it's the brand experience and all of that storytelling element. So they kind of want it to be magazine-y and experiential. but also they want people to be able to find stuff and buy it quickly. So they've got that sort of difficult journey to tell. And you see this playing out if you go to my favorite example is Zara, where they are going completely the opposite direction of full-on editorial and not very easy to use, I would argue. But you got to get it right. And I think with luxury, it's an interesting area because they kind of want you to explore. It's an easy one to pick out because those categories mean very little to me, and I would struggle to find, if I was looking for something specific, I'd struggle to find that. So, and one of the things that we used to do with research for Burberry is we would show that the journey was most often from magazines, right? So you'd see one of these bags in a magazine. We would show them a magazine cutting, and then we would ask them to find the product without the label. And this is where this kind of comes into its own, is because that is a realistic task that we saw quite a lot in our research, and people didn't know how to find it because they couldn't search for it because the search term, they didn't know what it was called.
So they didn't know the name and the price. They literally just had a picture of the product.
A picture in a magazine that they liked the look of. So it's a good task to use if you're going to test things like this, especially in a realistic scenario.
And again, something the audience can go away and test. Give a picture of one of your products to anybody in the office and tell them to find it. And see if they can or can't.
Yeah, and it can actually be quite interesting when you pick a color of something that is not easily described as well. So, like a maroon or something. So is it going to be under red? Is it going to be in brown?
Well, that second bag, is it orange? Is it brown? Is it?
Exactly,
yeah, it's in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
So I think just to summarize here then, so make sure those labels make sense to people. Make sure those categories aren't shared by multiple products. I think that's only true if they are, in those top level categories where they're mutually exclusive. Test your IA with users and refine it. So that is definitely a recommendation. Make sure they're tagged and labeled correctly, and cross-linking can be really useful, as we mentioned, as long as there's not too many, because then it becomes a bit of a farce because you're stuffing your navigation full of stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, this moves us on a little bit to user flows. Everybody's user flow is different, and the way in which you can navigate a site. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched some Hotjar recordings, or obviously Damian's been part of a lot of UX research and user testing. It's incredible to watch how people navigate a site and how different journeys, or the different journeys they go on. What I've tried to do here is break it down into different steps. So what we've been talking about in terms of touch points here are all interaction points that are green. So we've got the navigation, search, links, filters, sorting, sort by highest price, newest in, things like that. So these are all things that we expect the customer to interact with. The purple are kind of your sales flow. So this is what we expect customers to do when they're actively engaged in buying something or researching to buy something. And that's your categories, subcategories, products, mini cart, checkout, shipping, and obviously the success at the end. And then the blue, this is really when we inform and educate. And that could be something like a blog post. It could be an experiential page. Apple do those amazingly for like the iPhone. When it's launched, you can scroll down and see all the features and you get immersed in all of the kind of experience of the phone. So those are really, really good if you're selling kind of high value, considered purchase things. People might want to explore things like your shipping rates or your terms. So again, making that available for people. So this is like this section is like inform and educate. And it's really more prevalent on considered purchases. Like we say, we've got to educate the customer, make sure they haven't got any questions that remain unanswered. And a good test, like Damian's just actually mentioned before, a test is from any one of those pages, can you then navigate to a product, or can you navigate to the homepage or a category or something like that? Because you don't want to inform and educate and then lose them because there isn't the onward journey from there into those purple blocks and into that buying process. We had an example customer that we were working with a couple of months ago. Their highest landing page on their website was a blog post. and at the bottom of the blog that mentioned products, talked about their services and stuff like that, but had no call to action. So it was also one of the highest exited pages. So it's really important that you kind of, like Damian said, cross-reference. If you're creating a content page, that you can easily navigate to categories, products that have been featured in the information, and allow customers to join those different journeys. So really, we need to be able to navigate through all of this by really good cross-referencing. In your experience, Damian, and user testing, do you see frustrations when retailers haven't done enough to educate the customer or to resolve customer queries?
Yeah, I mean, we saw it just then really in the Go Outdoors example. You know, that's a really common one where people just don't quite know what's the difference between two things. So I want to make a purchase decision. I need a jacket, for example. I don't want to make the wrong decision. It's probably going to be costing me upwards of 100 quid at least, I would say, for a jacket like that. So I don't want to waste my money, and I don't really want to have to go in store and ask someone. So it's a good example where actually a little bit of education at the point of purchase or just before I'm then filtering down into which product I want would have been ideal in that example. And as you say, there are some examples that do that really well, but what you really don't want, the reason why this is so important, is that it's the most common point that I see people leave a site, or one of the most common points, once they've actually got into a product category, but then they've got questions about which is the best purchase decision to make. And if they can't find it and answer that question on the site, then they're quite often either going to Google to search something, what's the difference between this and that, or they'll go on to another provider's website and find the answer there.
Well, I've got an example on my desk here. I'm reasonably familiar with e-commerce stores. I somehow managed to buy 2 left wing mirrors for my bike. So I thought they were universal, but actually you've got to buy one left and a separate page to buy the right, which again wasn't posted on the page. So I now have 2 left wing mirrors, which is great.
Nice.
So we've got a checklist for products. So like a product page checklist. So is availability clear? So, you know, can the customer see that they can buy it's in stock and you know, ready to be shipped? Can I see when I would get delivery? Again, I think it's really important that the customer knows when they land on a page how soon they're able to get it in their hand, because if it's a hobby, I might be doing it at the weekend, so I want to know it's going to arrive before then. If it's a present, I need to know it's going to arrive before a certain date. If it's like a day-to-day use item, then am I going to get it before the other one runs out? So, you know, I think Amazon do that fantastically. You look at a product page and you see exactly when it's going to be delivered, almost as much as the price and all the other product information. Is it affordable? Sometimes that will just come with the price. You know, it's $9.99. Well, you know whether that's affordable or not. If it's a high ticket item or considered purchase, then have you done it all you can to make it affordable? Perhaps you're using something like Klarna and you can show that instead of £300, it's just 3 payments of £100. So is it affordable? Are the main features visible? So can we see the image, other images? Can we see bullet points of the main features of the product that we're looking at, just to make sure, oh yes, it's the Chrome one. Oh yes, it's the left and the right one. Or no, you want to buy a right one as well. So are those main features visible? And can we keep it above the fold? So can we do all of that buying, is the buy button and everything that we need to do for that purchase above the fold? And even with a mobile, I think, again, being able to see all this information clearly above the fold will mean that purchasers can land on that page and make a decision without having to look too much further. If you've got a complicated product, you may have had to do like a inform and educate process. And on some products that sit in the middle, there may be more information under this that tells the customer about things like warranty or build quality and things like that. So it's not to say that there isn't information that is important if people are researching something, but these are the things that I think are really important on the product page. I've done a really good way of helping you remember this. It's actually my name. I did have to fudge that a bit to make that work, but there you go. I've had a look at Absolute Music. I think they're a local retailer actually to us in Bournemouth. They got an 01202 number. They've done part of a job here. So clear on the benefits. We can see that they've got trust there. They've got price match. They've got delivery information. It says when it's going to be dispatched. Again, the delivery link there. But when it's dispatched doesn't mean you're going to get it that day. It means they're going to send it that day. So again, a little bit confusing. They've got the buy above the fold, and they've got the availability above the fold there as well. So I think they've done kind of half a job. I apologize for my creative artwork here, CJ and Mike, but I've done a version, and I've just tried to introduce some of those other things. So I've kept the things that they said, that I said they'd already done well. But here we've got clear imagery. So we can see there are other images, the front, the back. It might have, you know, a feature on the back that the customer's particularly interested in. Then we've got affordability. So we've broken down this into 3 payments. They do offer Klarna. I looked further down the page and saw this exact information. So why haven't they brought that higher up straight into the key buying area to let the customer know it's affordable? We've got the product features. So, you know, they're further down in the description, but why can't we just, oh, yes, it's the one that's got the chrome, or it's the one that's the modern C shape, or it's rosewood. All of those things I think you'd probably want to know before you buy and commit to something, because there could be variations of this product out there. Then we've got the time. So, you know, order in the next 2 hours or whatever it says for delivery by, and then it gives you a date. So going back to that checklist, I think we've then got all of the things that help us make a purchase. It's affordable. I've got all the features. I know when I'm going to get it. I've got all the clear delivery. I've got the purchasing all above the fold. And that kind of makes it, you know, a much easier sell than having to dive and navigate that product page to find all that out. How do you think that compares those two, Damian? Do you see the benefit of the two?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was going to say I want to see the full product in the image. I was also going to say there's a lack of information. I think it would still be nice to get a bit more description. So I'm assuming the description of the products is below that. So, you know, why would I buy this one as opposed to another one? Because those features might not be enough for me if I was buying that as a gift, for example.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that, I mean, this might be a minor point, but I'd kind of like to see the one of the product images in context, so somebody holding it, to see the, just to make sure it's not a miniature guitar. Like, it comes and it's about like 2 inches. The other one that really captures my attention is the make us an offer button. That's kind of new. I haven't seen much of that before. I'd be curious how that works, and I've got no expectation of what's going to happen. So I think it would be nice to have a little bit of understanding of what does that really mean.
Yeah, like a tooltip or something.
Just something, yeah, just to say, you know, you can make us a reasonable offer and we'll consider it and we'll email you back or something, because I don't know how that's going to work, and it's a bit new and different. It breaks my mental model a bit. So I think I'd want a bit more understanding of what that is. But otherwise, yeah, that's good.
I think the only other thing I thought is that there's no actual product reviews higher up. There's the global reviews from FIFO up in the benefits bar, but no actual product reviews, which would just give that social proof and kind of reassurance that other people have enjoyed the product. No snazzy way to remember this one, I'm afraid. I couldn't get it to work with Damian's name. So content page checklist, you know, we've spoken about this in some of the things Damian said. So is the next or previous step, stage or page available? Can they navigate somewhere else? Can they navigate back? If products are in the content, have we linked them? You know, have we got even just a basic text link in the text itself? You know, is far better than nothing. As I said, one of the highest landing pages this person had described products and didn't even link to them. So people weren't finding what to do next. There can also be things on content pages that you might want the customer to do. So, you know, create an account, or why don't you sign up for our newsletter? Those can be other subtle ways of getting the customer to become a returning customer or re-engage with them at a later date. We can talk about related articles or products. So at the bottom, you can have a carousel of other articles that were similar, or other things people found useful, or products people bought. So that's another way to move from that content through to the product journey. And is it clear for users to, you know, what to do next? I think that's the question you probably have to ask yourself, isn't it? Like you said, if you do that trunk experiment, is it clear what they need to do next or where they need to go? That seems quite logical when you're looking at a content page as well. Okay, Chris, have we got any questions?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, guys. Really, really good. Very insightful. Lots of good examples. So if anybody has any questions, pop them in the chat, and I'll read them out, and we'll have Damian or Adam answering the questions.
Okay, well, we'll cover a few bits whilst we're doing that, see if any come through. So other useful things to mention, we're not going to have time to go over these in huge detail, but there's the footer navigation to consider. There's product recommendations on things like category pages, product pages, like we've said in content pages. The history of what people have looked at, so recently viewed, recently purchased. Filters and search results pages. So, sorry, filters within search results pages. I know we touched on that a little bit, and a sitemap. So I think all of these things are important parts to your information architecture, but something you're not going to cover on here. Anything else, Damian, that you think we should add to this list?
No, I mean, I think the you may also like or goes well with is actually really important. Often it's kind of done poorly, but I think it can be done really well. So for example, in that example of the guitar, what else, if I'm buying that as a gift, for example, what else am I going to need? If I'm buying that as a gift and I want my, I don't know, son to play it straight away, is that all he needs? Is there leads? Is there anything else that I need to consider as part of this purchase? And that can be really frustrating when you don't know what you're buying and you are gifting. Is to have that sense, and particularly with something like fashion, to get a sense of what goes well is always pretty good. Yeah, FAQs, that's a good point. Okay, great.
So Chris is going to launch this in the chat now. We've only got 5 of these available, so thanks to the sponsor Hotjar, we have 5 full business trials to give away. That gives you access to all of their tracking features: heat maps, session replays, scroll depth, frustration and U-turn. We've talked a little bit about that today. Engagement areas, loads of things that you can learn about your visitor. And it starts recording on all of the pages, so you can see insights within kind of 24 hours. Click the link in the chat if you want to take this offer up, and we'll let the winners know later today. But also, Damian, you wanted to offer a service as well.
Yeah, so just kind of, anyone on the call, if they're interested in chatting through a problem they've got with the navigation or question about categorization or whatever it might be, I'm offering a free 15-minute chat. And yeah, take me up on it, bend my ear, ask questions. I'm happy to help.
Great. And Chris, you'll put that link in the chat now as well. So two great things there. Make use of us. Damian's offering there a specific problem or something you want to chat through. I think that's really great. So thanks, Damian, for that. We've been talking about this for the last 3 months. So we've got some really interesting content. You're going to get all of these insights in kind of one download, which again, Chris will put in the chat. You're going to have to work out which link does which. But these are a little bit clickbaity for the title. So apologies for that. But the content in here, I can assure you, is awesome and focused on helping you with your e-commerce stores. So these are some of the main topics that we've explored. Chris will make the download available now. It'll also get some of this information on a blog, which you can share with your teams. So, Chris, any further questions before we just do a recap?
Well, I actually have a question, and it's about mega menus, because when I read one of the articles, by the way, we have some good articles on medialaunch.co.uk with more examples of what we were talking about. But mega menus, obviously, they're really hard to do, because if you have a business and you're selling thousands of products, you kind of have to rely on a mega menu. And in the past, I worked for a business that, the solution was that they had to split the business into multiple websites. That was the best thing to do, to not keep the products in one place, just so it makes sense to people. So what do you guys have any tips on if someone needs a mega menu, how would you make it right?
I mean, I think the only way to answer that really is you've just got to lay it all out and look at if you look at the John Lewis example, they've got a mega menu. You can imagine all of the different categories of products they sell, and yet they have managed to put them into some order and some organization structure that people can understand. So it is possible. It just takes time and effort. And I think that's unfortunately, there's no quick route to the right answer here. It's going to take time and effort. You might have to test it with people and refine it until you get it right, but you can do that. It is possible.
I think if we're talking about the same type of buyer, we're not switching between, perhaps retailer and B2C customer and B2B customer, then the ASOS example is perfect, because you can have those really high level categories, like they've got men and women. You could have 4 or 5 top main level categories there. And then once you engage with one of those, then the relevance of the submenus kick in. I think the difficulty would be if you've got to blend 2 different buying experiences and 2 different, formats of buyer and things like that, or 2 different geographies or things like that, that might not work. But if it was just sectors of a business, then that would work, I think.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So all the links for the Hotjar trail and meeting with Damian and our white paper are in the chat.
Great. So just to finish off, then, what's it going to do for me? I think about what the customer wants to see at the right time. So better consideration to the page layouts, reduce frustration and encourage the most logical next step. So a more logical flow for the user. Reduce drop off in your sales and customer journey funnel. So that's going to be by, better performing key pages on the store. Well organized, catalogued, logical, easy to find, good navigation. We've spoken about a lot of that. So that's your product information and making it easier to find. And then hopefully this increases revenue for the business, so you can reinvest back into the e-commerce store. You'll get a link from Chris via email if you've missed any of this or want to watch it again. So that will come out shortly. We'll host a copy of this on our website. There's links on our website for the white papers and the downloads also in the chat. And then next month we start our new campaign, which is around B2B e-commerce. So keep your eyes out for that in the usual places. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks very much, Damian, for your time. Damian from Make Human. How can people get in contact with you, Damian?
So makehuman.co.
Perfect. And thanks to our sponsor Hotjar for the great giveaway prizes, and Media Lounge team Chris, John, Carly, and everyone behind the scenes that makes this happen. So thank you, and hopefully see you next time.